see, do we have any, is this our group? Any other people dialing in? Okay, wonderful. Well, my name is Casey Baker, as Zeffi said, and I actually used to live here in Sedona. I moved here in 2006 for a couple of years, and then I had time in between where I spent about 3 months a year here, and then I moved here to have my baby a couple of years ago, and just moved back to California. So this is really special for me to be brought back in a professional way to come and be here, because I feel homesick for Sedona a lot. How many of you are from here? How many of you actually live here? Okay, majority. How many of you have like a kind of magical story about how Sedona drew you in to live here? Yeah. I do too. When I was, I guess it was 2006, I was living in New York City, and I had a dream. I woke up in the morning and I had this like massive feeling of expansion and love and longing in my heart, and just this vision of these red rocks, and it's like, what the heck is that? And I totally forgot about it. Went on with my life, had a very full, fun life in New York, and a month later I had the same dream and the same vision, and I knew I had to go find those rocks. I didn't know where they were. And that summer, my family had a home in Santa Fe, Taos for the summer. And I decided I was going to go on some big Southwest tour and find rocks of my dreams. And I rented a car and I drove around to a bunch of places. And one day I drove into Sedona off of 179 from Highway 17. And as soon as Bell Rock and all of the rocks came into view, it was like, and it was the most amazing moment, because my favorite song at that time, Praise You by Fatboy Slim, came on the radio, and I burst into tears and laughter and chills, and I just knew that I was home. And up until that point, I had been such a wandering gypsy, and it was the most amazing feeling. And so I spent 4 magical days here. I knew that I needed to move here, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to move here. And what I want is a little 2-bedroom home in West Sedona, so I can have a home office, and that's what I want to do. And I want to move here as soon as possible. And I flew back to New York, and at that time I had subletted my place in New York for the summer because I had been gone, so I stayed with my cousins. And my cousins lived in the Upper West Side. And I never used their phone because I had a cell phone, but one day, about 2 weeks after I had gotten back, my cousin, Beth, said, I think there's a voicemail for you on our phone. It's from an old woman from Sedona, Arizona, but she's calling for somebody named Kara. And I was like, well, it must be for me, because who else would be calling from Sedona? And so I called this woman back. And up in those 2 weeks were super busy. I had not done anything to look for a place to live. I had not looked on Craigslist. I had not looked for a car. I did nothing. It was just still a desire in my heart. And I called this woman. And this woman picks up the phone, and she's 90 years old, and her name is Sue Love. And I said, Sue, my name is Casey Baker. You called and left a message on my cousin's voicemail for someone named Kara. Were you calling for me? And she said, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I found Kara. Kara is one of my best friends who lives in New York. We used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show together in the 50s. We were dancers and performers, and I was like, that's amazing. And she was like, so it was the wrong number. I was like, you know, Sue, that is so funny, because I was just in Sedona. She was like, really? Yeah, and I said, and it's so funny because I thought maybe you were calling about a place to live or something like that, but I haven't even started looking for any of that. She's like, well, you're looking for a place to live? And I said, yes, and she goes, well, that's so funny because my husband and I are trying to rent our little 2-bedroom home in West Sedona. And that's how I ended up here. Awesome. So I started off living in this 2-bedroom home, actually in a retirement community when I moved here. And it was amazing. And they adopted me and took me in and helped me find my car and became dear friends and like my adopted grandparents. And it was so magical. So I definitely had like this experience in Sedona just so loving and absorbing me in. And I know probably many of you who live here, travel here, and this place is special to you. You know what I'm talking about, because it is really magical. Well, one of the things that I would love to do, and Zeffi and I had talked about this, is that I would love to have the opportunity to, in just a minute, I'm going to randomly call on a few of you one by one to come up here and actually speak in front of the group to everyone. And I don't know if you knew that was part of the conference. We didn't want to tell you because you thought maybe some people might not come if they knew they were going to be speaking here, because it's such a huge fear. So I guess the first question I want to ask you, and knowing that, is when I say that, knowing in just a minute you may be up here speaking in front of everyone, who here feels like something happening in your body? Who here feels some intensity of sensation, fear, or something going on inside your body? Yeah. Okay, some of you. Now, I want to talk about that, and actually I want to ask you, so those of you who thank you for being honest, raise your hand. What is that experience like in your body right now? Knowing in the anticipation that you are potentially going to be up here speaking in front of this group. Yes, what is that like?
It's like a clenching in my heart and in my stomach, and I speak publicly. But it happens every time. And it's almost, I've gotten to the point where I feel like an observer, so I'm just like watching this kind of in here, and of course then I wonder what's wrong with me, but maybe you'll shed some light on it.
Thank you so much. Yes. Who else? Who else? Yeah, what is it like for you?
Just like a fear, like a tingling, like heat starts coming out, some sweat, perspiration, and then my mind just goes, what am I going to say? Okay, and so I'll start planning.
Thank you. Thank you. How many of you feel something, but you wouldn't call it fear? There might be an increase of sensation of some kind in your system, but it's something else. Yeah, how about you, right here?
It's an excitement. I actually connect with my blood flow, I think, and my blood's just pumping, and I'm feeling it, especially in this area for some reason.
Awesome.
I don't know what that is.
Thank you. Thank you. So whether it's excitement or fear or resistance or the clenching or the tightening, most people, and I give talks a lot and I talk to a lot of audiences, it is very rare that when someone knows there is potentially an experience about to occur where they are about to be in front of a group of people to speak, that they feel nothing. I don't think I've ever encountered a room where someone has said, yeah, I just feel nothing. Is there anybody here who just feels like nothing at all? No? Okay, I'm still taking polls on this to see if that's actually true and debunk my theory here. But most people feel something, and for a lot of people, it is something they equate with something that is uncomfortable, it is fearful, there is a resistance, it is unpleasant, it is unpleasurable, and that for a lot of people, that experience is the thing that keeps them from wanting to get out there and speak. Some people do it anyway, which is amazing. But a lot of people, it completely holds them back. And the impact is that for those people, that especially if there's something inside of them that they may want to express, there's some beauty inside, some wisdom, some idea or intelligence that they want to give, the impact of not doing that because of the fear that may come up or the self-doubt that may come up can create so much suffering. And what the impact is for our world around that is that we miss out on those ideas and on that wisdom. And I truly believe, and I know that we're all sitting in this room in an event called Women Arising, because we know that women rising to give their wisdom and to give of their ideas and their intelligence is such a profound medicine that our world needs. Yes. So deeply. And so what I want to talk about today is about what the true nature is of this experience inside of us that will allow us to have freedom and be in a state of grace and a state of yes to giving of our ideas, to giving of our wisdom in a way that is generous and potentially even joyful for us. So I have had that experience very strong, even every time I go to speak. I have so much going on inside of my body. It's like wild in here. And it used to be that it would totally hold me back. I would long to share my creativity or my ideas or the ways in which I want to give of myself to change the world and do so through my voice, but I would hold back. And that was a major place of suffering in my life. So I'm gonna share a little bit about my journey and what that was like, and then I want to share with you some thoughts and ideas that I have that I hope will be supportive for you to have whatever wisdom and ideas are inside of you to just be a free flow in the ways that fulfill you and in the ways that the world deeply needs. So I grew up in Texas, and I had a very traditional background. I went to an Ivy League college. I became an investment banker after college. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was so amazing because they come to the college and they just wine and dine you, and it's like the thing that has the most prestige, and I had no idea. And I ended up in an office building, the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco, from 9 in the morning until 2 in the morning every day. And I was like, what have I done, right? I knew that I had made a wrong turn. And so I actually one day I just up and I quit. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I actually got another job at a hedge fund, but in a different role. And that period marked a time for me of a tremendous amount of exploration. I don't think you can live in San Francisco without somehow like being affected by the fire of consciousness that is happening there. There's so much expansive thinking and understanding of our true nature, and just there's something about that area that is very powerful in that way. And I definitely caught that bug, which was interesting because I was someone who, for me, spirituality was either you're Christian or you're Jewish. Maybe I've heard of some Muslim people. I had no idea. I had no, I came from a very Christian background in Texas. My life was very materialist based. I had 4 closets full of amazing clothes from like Neiman's and things like that. I had a boyfriend at the time who was a trust fund inheritance guy, who was also a real love, but there was such a lobbing onto that, you know, that was, just to be honest, that was like a real navigating force for me, you know, find a very successful, rich husband and ensure my protection. And that was my driving force, and I had that relationship, and then that all fell apart. That relationship completely fell apart, and I went into a place of really dark depression, and just, you know, made that wrong turn in my career, relationship, no more, just a big space of depression and self-hate. And I took that opportunity to pull myself out of the gutter, to find myself a therapist. And I found myself a therapist who was also a Buddhist. Her name was Bronnie Gallen. And that, working with her, was so life-changing for me. She was the first person who ever said to me, notice your thoughts. And do you notice that you're thinking right now? And I was like, oh my God. I'm noticing, I'm thinking, and that was the first time the noticer, the observer became, I awakened to that. And that is a momentous moment, momentous. And that just set off a huge chain of reactions in my life. And about a month or 2 months after working with her, I remember I had one afternoon where I was gifted a profound experience. I was sitting in my room in San Francisco's cute little Victorian house, and I was actually packing up because I was going to move to a different place, and I remember looking at a map. And I looked at a map of the world, and at that point in time in my life, I was super, and through my childhood, I was very fascinated with British history. I studied British history in college. I was really into it. And I had this random thought. I was like, you know, if I had been born in London, would I be the same person that I am now? And then I had this thought, who am I? And that thought, I had never heard of anybody asking that thought. That was a very organic thought that occurred within me, that questioning. And I had what I can only describe as a sudden spiritual awakening experience in that moment. Everything in my surrounding world disappeared. The world of form was gone, and all there was infinite light and colors that I can't even begin to describe. And a recognition that the truth of who I am is infinite, boundless joy. And that is also the true nature of every other being. And I noticed that my body was moving in this way that was so slow. It was like so slow, and every little millimeter of movement was just like pure ecstasy. It was amazing. And I wasn't consciously doing it. It was some force was moving my body, and it felt so beautiful. And then all of a sudden, it was like gone. And all there was like bed, chair, hairbrush. And in that moment, I wanted to go back so badly. The first thought was, what can I find to kill myself, to go back? And then my mind was freaked out, and it was just like crazy in here. No idea what had happened, no context for it, never heard about anything like this, no idea, but it changed my entire life. And it literally changed the way that I see. And I knew that my life would never be the same. In that moment, I remember sitting in my bed, terrified by what had just happened, totally confused. And I knew the only thing I needed to do was, my mind was like, I gotta connect, and I knew I needed to go outside. So I threw on my shoes, and I went outside, and once I was out in nature, it was like, oh, wow. And it was my relationship with nature totally shifted in that moment. It felt like home, and I could come back and connect to the source of all of life. So that shifted things. It was like my brain opened, and all of a sudden, I was seeing suffering all over the place. And the compassion in my heart was just for all the areas of suffering that I saw happening in the world was so huge. And then the wisdom that was coming through. And I had no idea what to do with any of this, but my boyfriend at the time, I had a different boyfriend, was so supportive. I remember being like, I had to break up with him. I couldn't be in relationship and be exploring all of this. And he was like, I'm just really enjoying being with you. And it was such a reorientation for me around relationship and men, that I could be in such a state of exploration, such a state of wonder in my life, and have this wonderful friend with me. Well, pretty soon I knew that I wanted to go leave everything and explore. And so I ended that relationship. I sold everything that I had, and I took off on a one-way ticket to Thailand. And I spent the next 4 years traveling. And during that time, I had such a profound experience of what I can only call years and years later, an experience of what I would call this divine feminine energy, or this divine feminine love moving its way through my body. It was opening to that within myself. But I had no idea about any of this lingo. I had no idea about what that was. I had no context for what was happening in my life. I just knew that I was having massive amounts of creativity pour through. Poetry, wisdom, understanding. All of a sudden I was going dancing all the time, and the experience of dancing was just, it was so blissful to allow this, whatever this experience was, this intelligence that was moving through my body, to allow myself to move. And that was a period of time where it was really beautiful, but it was also so challenging, because I had this desire to share of my creativity and the wisdom that was coming through, but I felt so held back. I felt so much self-doubt. Who am I to be sharing any of this inside me? Who am I to be sharing any of this? I'm a nobody, right? What right do I have to share this? What if people hate it? What if people think what feels so profound and beautiful and true within me? What if people think it's a bunch of BS? What if people reject it? What if people reject me? And that possibility was so painful to me at that time in my life. I couldn't do it. And so it was like I had this secret inner world going on inside of me. But this continued to undo my life, right? I mean, it was not only the creativity that was coming through and the wisdom that was coming through, it was also a time of major sexual transformation for me. I was I had this another Israeli boyfriend on this trip, or on this adventure, and I just remember it was so amazing because I would get into this space of giving him massage, and it was so inherently sensual upon this amazing music. I was really into like B Tribe at the time, and we'd light candles, and I'd give him sensual massage. And that experience was, for some reason, being in that space of sensuality for me was such a direct access for me to the flow of love and to the flow of what I can only describe now as something that was inherently divine. But at the time, I'd never heard about that. Nobody ever talked about God or divinity coming through sensuality, especially where I grew up. I didn't know anybody who was having an experience like this. I felt so alone in it, but it was so true, and it was so beautiful. And that too was something where it was like this sort of thing I didn't really talk about with people, but I would experience that with various men who would come in my life, and it was a beautiful access point to something very rich and profound and sacred. So during these travels, I'm having all this opening, and I'm subsequently having all of this closing to letting any of it out. And the suffering was beyond anything I can describe. My body ended up expressing it so intensely, I ended up developing a severe case of cystic acne on my face. I mean, it was disfiguring. I remember when I ended up back at home, I had an opportunity to come to visit my family. I went to my family, and they just thought I completely walked out on some kind of crazy limb. I was that crazy gypsy daughter. And I remember going with them to a restaurant, and this little kid, we walked by, and I remember he said to his parents, "What happened to her face?" You know, it was so, and the shame was so much. So I was just living in a cloud of shame. Well, I ended up having an experience that began to shift things at a very fundamental level for me, that gave me more access to liberation, to freedom, and to an understanding of what was going on for me. I had an experience in Thailand where I met a man who was a living Tantra teacher. Now, at that time when I heard the word Tantra, that completely freaked me out because I thought Tantra was just all about like crazy sex practices. And that was just, I mean, I just felt a world of no around that. But my engagement with him was not sexual. It was not sexual. We had one evening sitting together in the rain in this yoga dome alone. And I remember just sitting with him, just facing him. And he gave me some profound teachings that night. And in the space of having eye contact with him, and being in a space of just complete vulnerability, of being totally seen with him, I had an experience of profound oneness and a recognition that everything that I experience, everything that I feel, including all of my emotions, it's all pure energy. Without any of the story around it, I could just see it for the truth of what it is. And that seeing gave me perspective to begin to see and understand some of the intensity of the shame and the doubt and the fear that was inside of me with new eyes, from eyes that could understand a deeper truth of the freedom that is inherently here. Diving into exploring sacred sexuality and Tantra for several years, and that became a real gateway for me to understand more of how to be with what is happening in my life from a place of opening to the intimacy of my experience. So that is really the core of what Tantra and that particular ancient teaching is about opening to intimacy with everything. So at a certain point, I began to feel this, yes, I'm ready to share my poetry with people. I'm ready to share my creativity with people. I'm ready to share my voice. And I had my first experience of actually standing up to to share my poetry, a spoken word piece at an event. And all of a sudden I encountered for the first time in many years this experience that we talked about before. before getting up to speak, that intensity in my body. And I was able to see, oh my gosh, wait, I was able to start to see what was happening. What was happening in just a pure energetic level. And I want to share with you what I saw, because what I saw is something that I have now shared with many, 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 many thousands of women all over the world, that has provided an enormous amount of liberation for them. It was a huge place of liberation for me. And being with the intensity of energy that comes before we stand up and we are seen, we are heard, it's really the key, one of the greatest keys to unlocking our true radiance, whatever it is that wants to radiate out of us, allowing that, the spaciousness to do that. So, let me get us a little water. 1 second. So right now, I'm standing in front of you. I'm one person. And there's a whole bunch of you out here. There's a lot more of you than there are of me, and all of your focused attention is on me right now. Your eyes, your ears, but it's also the energy of your presence. And that's what, it's invisible, but it's real and it's powerful. And all of your attention and presence is focused right here on me, and that's a lot. That is a lot of energy for one person to be able to be with. And so what's happening is that in preparation, in order to support me in being able to stand up here in front of you and be able to speak and be able to give in a way that lands with you, to be able to come up here and not just be completely blown over by all of this ocean of invisible energy and presence, all of your focused life force focused right here. What's actually happening is that life is sending me an influx of chi. Life is sending me an influx of pure energy in order to be able to effectively match the energy that you are putting on me right now. So it's like I have like a cord being plugged into the energy of the universe, and the universe is sending so much energy through my system in order to stand up here and be able to meet you, to be able to have presence, to be able to have charisma, to be able to give and have my words land with you in such a way that they can have impact. The challenge is that our minds do not understand this, but they sense something intense is going on. They don't necessarily see or comprehend that there's this invisible ocean of presence and focused attention coming at us. But it's real, it's happening. And when our minds do not understand something, they fear it. So what ends up happening is that when we don't understand what's going on, we have all of this energy in our system, and our minds start to freak out around it. There's a resistance to it. And it can come across as fear, as tightness, as a suffering of some kind, almost as though we're a victim to this experience. It's happening to us instead of happening for us. The truth is that this energy that's coming through your body, all that intensity of sensation, whether you feel it as fear or whether you feel it as excitement, what it really is, it's the very real feeling of your power. This is, like, we talk a lot about power. Power can oftentimes be a very philosophical discussion about talking about power, enhancing women's power, feminine power. If you want to really step into the depth of your power, then stand up and give of your creativity or your wisdom or your deepest truth in the presence of others. And you will meet a true visceral experience of what that power is. Because it is designed to give of the value and the gifts that are in here to the world. That's what it's designed for, and we can use it for that. So we want to, in this situation, learn to say yes to this experience when it comes on. And simply saying yes, that when this intensity of energy arises in our system before we're out there to speak our truth or to give of our wisdom, that we simply just need to look at it and, again, not see it as something that is happening to us, but something that is happening for us. Yes, this energy is right on time. It is here to support me in being able to stand up and give effectively, to be able to have impact, to be able to help unlock, bring truth, help change, open people's perspective. That is what it is there for. So, saying yes, I believe in rising as women, in giving our greatest gifts to this world that is so hungry for the wisdom that we have to give, that it's an ever-evolving, ever-deepening process of saying yes. Because when we are truly centered in ourselves, in a space of just being who we truly are, relaxed in ourselves, all there is yes to what wants to flow through us and out to the world. However, as women, men have the same stuff that goes on for them. This is not unique to women. However, the hang-ups that we have, the sort of the deep confusions in our mind about our power, about the truth of what it means to be in a space of speaking our truth and letting our power come through, that a lot of those stories can be very unique to women. Right? So I want to talk about what a few of those are, in the hopes that if any of these trips are going on in your mind, which they have lived very deeply in mine, that it will allow those parts of your mind to relax and to be a deeper allowing yes to what it is that wants to flow through you and be given. So one of the first of these that I want to talk about is, and this is a very edgy subject for a lot of people, and I invite you as I'm talking about this just to notice. I mean, do you have any experiences when I talk about our sexuality and how this is related to our power? I know that for me, I do. I know that when sometimes people talk about sexuality, there are places where I still, for a moment, I notice it, right? And at this point, some of them fade away, but there's hang-ups that I've had, such deep hang-ups about my sexuality as a woman growing up on this planet. Most people are walking around feeling an enormous amount of shame, discomfort, fear about their sexuality. Many women, and I have been one of them, have been walking around thinking that our sexuality is something we can use to get something. And for a lot of us, it's on a very subconscious level. We grow up in a culture that teaches us that our sexuality is a commodity. And let me break that down, because that took me something to really understand that. You grow up as a girl in this culture, and there's billboards and magazines and movie stars and all these people, and they are sexy, and they're getting a lot of attention for that, and they're valued for it. So we grow up with this profound confusion that our sexuality is what makes us valuable, that's the value we have to give, right? And so that's a very confusing message, because the truth is that our sexuality is actually the river of life and of love. And it's actually the force through which the gifts that we have to give that are of value come through. And I have to tell you, when I had a child, this was a huge breakthrough for me. Because I remember having my child and nursing my child and having this experience in nursing my child of feeling the flow of pleasure through my body and the love. And that for me was, whoa, totally different. That was the huge reorientation I had to recognizing that sexuality, it's about this intersection of pleasure and well-being, right? It's that which flows through us that is pleasure and well-being. And I feel like for so long, my sexuality has been used as something, prior to this, I was still in this deep societal dream about, if I'm really sexy, then I'm going to be loved, right? or I'm going to get attention, or that if I can have, and this is a challenging thing for me to admit still, but I think it's something that a lot of women, if they're really honest with themselves, not all, but a lot, it's like, I use my sexuality and sex, and then I can have some amazing man in my life who will then, through that contract, then provide and take care of me. And it's so innocent. It's how it's been done for a long, long time. That's just the dance that we've been in as feminine creatures for a long time. But we're entering into a completely different era. And one in which that ancient story that runs through our biology and our brains, it has to shift. Because when we put all of this expectation and pressure on the men of the world to be the providers, and our sexuality is the thing that is like the contract in order to secure that, or to hold on to that, then we are essentially being in this dance of not really being in touch with or trusting the own value that is inside of us that we have to give, that is of value for exchange in that, not the sexuality. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's one of the most massive breakthroughs that we need to have. For me, I had one of the huge distinctions that I've had around sexuality is that when I really got involved in sensual dance, right? It's dancing, but it's being awake to how it feels through your body, right? Just how it feels, finding pleasure in all the different ways in which the body moves. For me, that was such a direct access to being in touch with the divine. And so through sensuality, that is where, as women, we access, it's where we can access our deepest spiritual wisdom. Through the body. Through the being the yes to the experience that we're having. And sensuality is not just about necessarily the space of how we may traditionally think about it, erotic turn on. It's about also bringing the sensuality to the places where we're closing, to where we feel fear or shame or doubt or pain or grief. It's about finding that edge of moving into that sensation and being a yes to it and seeing what is inside the nugget of that. That is, for us, the way that we can access such deep understanding and wisdom. And coming home so deeply to the truth of who we are. So when we are cut off from our sexuality, or we're walking around feeling this shame or this self-doubt or living in the dream, still, for many of us, that we need that our sexuality is a commodity. We are cut off from accessing the deepest flow of truth that lives within us, the deepest flow of wisdom that lives within us, as well as this deep flow of love. Because when we feel deeply in touch with all parts of ourselves and we open to our sensuality, we really truly open this deep river of love, of self-love within us. And when we open to that, there is no need for looking for all kinds of external validation for whether who we are, what we have to give is valuable, because we know and we see and are in touch with the value that is inherent inside of us through our very existence. And getting deeply in touch with our sensuality and sexuality is one of the most powerful, direct paths to having access to the value of our existence. Just seeing it. And that creates the space for us to be able to simply rest in ourselves and speak our truth. And be real, be authentic. So it's not your typical, how should I say, public speaking technique. The work that I teach is super unorthodox because of this, but I think it's massively important. Because when you look at the paradigm of leadership and professionalism in our world, it is changing, but it is still based on a masculine model of what leadership and professionalism looks and feels like. And unfortunately, too many women, too many girls look at that and they want to be leaders. They want to They want to be leaders in some domain in their life, but they look at that and they can't see themselves in that, and so they tell themselves a story that that's not me. Or that in order to be a leader, I have to cut off parts of myself so that I am less of a woman and more like that in order to be taken seriously, in order to have what I say be trusted. And what we miss out on is an enormous world of wisdom that this world is deeply aching for. So the things that I teach with women that I work with are all about how do we access this river of being a yes to whatever sensations are moving through us. This inherent sensuality that we all are so naturally tapped into because of who we are with women's bodies. How do we access that as a way to make being with the intensity of that energy that runs through us, that power, more fun, more pleasurable, more graceful, more filled with freedom? Because our sensuality, and people, this is something for me for a long time, I couldn't understand. Like, I knew there were people out there in the world of talking about the evolution of feminine power in this world, talking about getting our voices out there and being in our power and sensuality and sexuality. Those were all kind of like similar things going on in this genre of personal growth and spiritual evolution, but I couldn't really see how it was all actually connected until I had these realizations about the nature of sexuality and really what it is. Because when we want to, our greatest access to being with intensity of power, our own power in this world and bringing it out, is through bringing a way of relating to it that is inherently sensual, that is inherently a yes to being with that intensity of energy in our bodies. That's why when people talk about women's sexuality as the greatest power, it's yes, absolutely, our greatest power to love, to create, but also to be with intensity. And getting out there to share our messages with the world can be a very intense thing. You will encounter all kinds of your self-doubt. You will encounter the deepest fears of rejection. You will encounter the most intense sensations when you get out there to speak on a stage that really flippin' matters to you. All that stuff is going to come up. And one of the greatest, most simplest accesses to freedom for all of that intensity is to bring a way of loving it open through developing a sensual way of living it. Now, I want to be really clear that I'm not talking about getting up and being on stage and using your sexuality to get attention or manipulate. That is absolutely not what I'm talking about. Okay? This is a very different thing. It's a deeply personal, intimate experience of being with what arises within you, the power within, in a way that is inherently womanly. Because I really believe that it's time for women to get out there and speak and lead and show up in this world as women. Because the access as women that we have to being in our sensuality is an access to a deeper understanding of the nature of life, of love, of the value of life. And seeing that understanding is something that this world is like thirsting for. So this is one key place that I see that there's a lot of deep confusion. Right? And something that in my work that I've taken on to really redefine a new genre of public speaking training for women that is rooted in a deep understanding of what the true nature of power is and how we can, as women, as being fully in our bodies, find a yes to being with the intensity of the power within us, as well as accessing our deepest river of wisdom. Now, there's another domain that I think is something where we can get really messed up. And putting our own, our genius out into the world. We look around and we see other women who are putting their wisdom or doing their amazing work in the world. And we think, wow, she just got that, major book deal, or she's earning like $5 million, or she's so famous, and something's wrong with me. right? I can relate to that. I think that lives in a lot of us. So it's the success, especially in the reach of her, the value she has to give coming out into the world. It's not that her success happens separate from yours. When one woman brings out her wisdom and is a yes to her just life force, her gifts coming out, and she is having impact in that way, it is something that is actually happening in the collective field for all of us. And that's a very woo-woo thing to say, but it's true. It's really true. Because we don't rise alone, we rise together. That's the way that it works. And the flow of life, of love, of and yes, 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 her. Celebrate her. And what it does is it actually retrains your mind to see that there is no threat. There is no separation. And it retrains our mind to be a deeper yes to our own flow of brilliance. Mm-hmm. This is one of the cornerstones in what I teach and when I work with women. And it's something that's so important to me. When I first realized this, I remember, this was before I realized it. This was when I was living in the pain of this whole delusion. I remember being in high school, and I applied to a college that one of my best girlfriends was applying to. And she got rejected, and I got waitlisted. She did not talk to me for 3 weeks. And I got a very intense entrainment in my nervous system that was like, being successful is not safe. It's not safe. You could lose love. You could lose love from the women out there because the jealousy is so intense. And we are relational creatures. We will do anything to help keep the flow of love open with people. And we are so oriented that way. And that not wanting to lose love with the people that are deeply close to us, we aren't necessarily conscious of it, but oftentimes we will do stuff that keeps us down and small so that we don't lose that love relationship. And that happens a lot with women. It happens a lot with women. So I believe this is one of the big things that we have to reframe with women, is what I call ending the silent war between women. Because this is the silent war. It's the deep insanity that's going on in our relationship with women. It's also very much tied into this, it has a lot of its roots in this biological need for protection and providership, right? So if one woman over here is more beautiful than us, she might win the lotto of getting the dude who can, kill the most animals and bring them home for dinner, right? That's where that comes from. And so we fear other women's radiance. But we can't afford to live in that fear anymore. We cannot afford it. This planet cannot afford that belief system anymore. Now, I remember really getting that one of the most important things that I can do for women who are living in such deep states of oppression in other parts of this world is to be fully myself. Because I have that liberty, right? And the more fully I live in that expression of who I truly am and the gifts that I have to give, I am changing the paradigm that's out there. Completely changing the paradigm so that it makes it more possible for that paradigm to spread. It's like my responsibility. I had a trip that I took during my travels. I had a profound love relationship with a Palestinian man. And that was one of the most profound experiences of my life. We didn't speak the same language. We spent days together, blew my life wide open. And then we went our separate ways. And we were not in touch for a while. And I ended up traveling to Israel, and I contacted him. And I said, I'm coming to Israel. And he, by that time, another story, but he had since escaped to Sweden. Literally like over the wall, Palestinian wall, fake visa, torn around Europe. Finally, Sweden gave him asylum in the farthest northern reaches of Sweden. And he said, please go visit my family in the West Bank. while you're there. And this was during the Second Intifada, so there were bombs and buses going off. It was a crazy time. Arafat had literally just died. And everything in my system was such a yes. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go, and I did not tell my parents. All of my Israeli friends were like, you're crazy, you're gonna get killed, they hate Americans, you know, you're gonna get killed. And I was just like, I don't think so. I think it's okay. And so they had the family, the Palestinian family, had an Israeli friend who met me in Jerusalem. And I went to the wall, and I waited at the wall, and I mean, literally, have any of you seen the wall? You know what I'm talking about? The wall. The wall is literally this huge concrete wall that surrounds the West Bank of Palestine, the Palestinian territory, okay, to keep them caged. Okay, to keep also, from the Israeli perspective, to keep them safe, right? So there's a lot of different conflicting views on this, but when I went and I crossed through that wall, there was a young woman that greeted me on the other side. Her name is Jihan, and that was this guy, Kamal, his youngest sister, and he has 14 brothers and sisters. And she greeted me when we were the same age, and she spoke English some, and we became amazing friends. And I spent 2 weeks there. And it was so amazing. They took me around. I got to go to this epic all-woman party, because that's how they do it. Right? It was like from 3 years old to 103, these little kids and these ancient grandmothers, and everybody was just rocking it out. You know, they got like the hip thing down, and it was so amazing. It was so amazing. They brought in there was an engagement party, right? So there was about to be a wedding, and they brought in the boy who was going to get married. All the women surrounded him, and you know, he had his dance with the girl, and it was such a rockin' party. And that was the first place where my mind started to get blown, because I had this story that's like, you know, they have to be separate, and it's so terrible for them, and it's so terrible that they, you know, the women have to be separate in how they worship and separate in how they party. And I realized that this is not all black and white. There was a lot of joy in this, like tremendous amount of joy. And I spent those weeks there, and they took me around meeting all the family, which was like huge. And I got to go see Arafat's grave. I mean, he literally was just back in the PLO compound, and I was one of the first Americans to go and see it, which, I mean, you know, like I'm nobody, right? So that was the thought I was having, like, this is a crazy experience. I'm actually at Arafat's coffin and in the PLO compound with all the cars stacked up on top of each other that they used to barricade. I mean, it's just insane in there. And I was so rocked by what I saw being there literally in this wall, this caged environment. The checkpoint in Ramallah, which is like the capital in the West Bank, right? Where the Palestinian people sometimes wait for hours just to get from one of their little towns to another inside. And the Israelis keeping track with their weapons and all of that there. It's an intense scene. I mean, I traveled a lot, and I'd seen a lot of poverty, but this is my first time seeing oppression. And one night, I laid in bed, and I laid next to Jihan. And we were talking late into the night, and she said to me, you know, I have so many dreams. I want to go to a great college where I can get my PhD in psychology and come back and help the children here in Palestine learn to do something healthy with the anger at the situation rather than throw bombs. I want to be able to travel. I want to see the world, but I can't. I cannot get out beyond this wall. I cannot do these things. I feel like God is punishing me in this lifetime. The only choice that I have is to get married and have children. That's it. And it was like, you know, at that point I was this like broke, gypsy, wandering, 20-something-year-old girl, living in a state of, I had terrible acne at that time. That was the state of shame that I was living in. So much I wanted to give, and so trapped inside myself. And it was that moment when she said that, of having the profound realization that in every way, logistically, in my life as an American woman, I am free. If I dream it, I can do it, or I can create it. But I am imprisoned in my own mind. And I knew in that moment that I had a responsibility. I had a responsibility to free myself. I had a responsibility to give every ounce of wisdom and creativity and love that I've got because she can't. And because I want to, and I can. And that was such a huge moment for me of realizing that I had to, that was a massive start of profound inner work, of claiming my own liberation, which continues to this day. And, I think about these women who are having, all these family people, the Syrian situation, it's just, it's so intense in a lot of places out there. And if you have inside of you intelligence and ideas and wisdom and creativity that you want to give, but you feel in any way held back from doing it, and you're not, and you feel a suffering inside of yourself because you're not giving in the ways that you want to. I want to remind you how imperative it is to claim your liberation and to go for it full out and to be a full yes to this intensity that is inside of you, that is the very nature of your power. Because our world, we are at a time, and I know we all feel this, and it's so wonderful because it is true that also existing in this world is this very peaceful setting that we have. We have no war in our country. We are safe. We have all these amazing human rights as women. And if you dream it, or you think it, or you desire it, you can do it here. And we need for you to. It is absolutely crucial for you to bring that out in order to create the change that this world so deeply needs. So what I would like for us to do now is I would actually like for us to have this experience of having a few of you come up here and be in touch with and feel this intensity of energy in your body, whether you correlate it as excitement or fear, especially those of you who feel it as fear. And let's explore it. I want to give you a couple of little practices that you can use to begin to bring a greater state of yes into your system, to be a yes to the free flow of your voice, to the free flow of wisdom that lives inside of you. And what I also want us to do is to have a living experience of what it is like to be in such a profound space of celebration of one another as we do that. Because here is why. At some point for all of us, we had some kind of experience, most likely, especially those of us who feel fear or closure around it, where our nervous system equated getting up to speak our truth or to share our creativity in front of other people is not safe. We could potentially lose something. And it's important to help our nervous system to recalibrate that to being in a space of yes, to getting that it is safe, actually, to speak our truth and to share our wisdom, especially in the company of other women, because that is where the majority of the jealousy and the competition subconsciously lies for us. And that's what I want us to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to have those of you that are here in the audience sitting still when a woman comes up here to speak, okay? And we're going to keep it very short and sweet. When she comes up here, before she says a word, before she has anything that's come out of her mouth, we're going to give her a wild standing ovation. Just for having the pure gumption to get out there and do it at all, okay? And then with whatever she shares, when she's complete, we're going to give her another wild standing ovation. And when you're up here, I want you to soak it in. Just be a yes to that. Allow your system to have an experience of oh, this is good. This is safe. There is joy here. And it's really amazing how when we do that, it can shift. I've had women who have come to me who have had the most intense anxiety around speaking, One of them, one of my dear clients, Alana McAllister, she's the founder of Choices in Childbirth, which is like one of the leading foundations in the country that promoting women's empowerment around birth and their birth choices. And you know, when she first came to me, I've worked with her twice now on her talks. When she first came to me, she was taking drugs, beta blockers, to help deal with that anxiety. It was so profound for her. And she is a natural spokeswoman for her foundation, and she was not out there doing it, right? Huge loss, having somebody not out there sharing that particular wisdom. Huge loss. And she had a huge reframe around it through this whole experience and found that actually public speaking is so fun, so much joy. And just recently I was able to support her in another talk that she was working on where she delivered the keynote talk for Lamaze International.
Wow.
Yeah, huge, huge conference. And something that she relishes because she is now a yes to the intimacy, right? Because this is such an intimate experience. We talked before, it's like finding intimacy in everything, including this here. This is such a space of potential deep connection with an audience, and helping to rewire ourselves to feel safe in this kind of environment, to simply be ourselves and speak our truth. It's one of the most profound things that we can do to bring out the truth of the truth and the gifts that we have to give. So in that light, what we're going to do is I would love for you right now, if you have a piece of paper, does everyone here have a piece of paper? And if not, you can think it for a moment. It's okay if you don't. It's totally fine if you don't. You can just sit with it for a minute, okay? Because when you come up here to speak, I would love for you to not read it off. You need your paper in your seat. I just want you to come up here and just be in the moment and speak from your heart. So the question that I have for you, I'm going to give you just a moment to do this, okay? Is I want you to close your eyes right now. And I want you to touch in for a moment with your breath and feel the experience of your breath in your chest, in your heart. Feel the experience of your breath in your breasts. And I say breasts because when we tap into the energy of our breasts, we tap into the flow of love, of nurturing, how we long to nurture, how we long to love. And I want you to think about this place as you're feeling into this part of yourself. I want you to bring into your mind's eye the situation or the challenge that's happening in this world, the suffering that you care deeply about, that you want to see somehow transform. There may be many. I know there are so many for me. But think about one that, if it got to the end of your life, that you could say, wow, I really feel deeply satisfied in my soul that I did something about that place of suffering or challenge in this world. And just feel into that. What is that suffering? What is that challenge? What is that insanity? And think about who is experiencing that. And just feel them right now. Feel that, however that occurs for you. Feel that, connect with whoever is experiencing that suffering right now. And in the way that just naturally comes to you, just send them love. Send them love. This is tapping here into the flow of compassion. Compassion is amazing. There's a Tibetan teaching that compassion and wisdom are like two sides of the same coin. When you tap into your compassion, you unlock such profound reservoirs of wisdom and understanding. what I would like for you to do, you can just think it in your mind, or if you have a piece of paper, you can write it down. I want you to just think about what it is that you believe that is possible. What it is that you believe about this particular situation of suffering in the world, and what is possible. And to think about it in the phrase of like you're saying, like, I believe, and then finish that sentence. And then maybe there's another, I believe, and then finish that sentence. I'm just going to give you a moment to marinate in that, to really feel into that. Again, it can just be something that's marinating in your own mind, or you can write it on paper. Okay. All right. In just a minute, I'm actually going to encourage you. I'm going to take volunteers to come up here. But I want to encourage you, especially if you are really feeling it. Give yourself this opportunity, this gift to just come up here and let's play with this. And let's go for your liberation. Okay, let's go for your freedom. Awesome. Okay, come on up here. Let's get into this.